Indoor Bocce Host Operations webinar. I'm Brian Montgomery, Chair for Unified Bocce. And just to give a quick introduction, this webinar and this host manual is for the purpose of outlining the guidelines and responsibilities for the district tournament that will be taking place in each district throughout the state of Maryland. The whole school system is responsible for assigning or assuming the position of tournament director. So ideally, the Unified Sports District representative shall serve as the tournament director, and I believe that is the case in most, if not all, of the districts. However, in the event that the district rep is unable to serve in that capacity, then he or she is responsible for appointing a capable person who's able to administer the tournament and manage the competition. Of course, if that is the case, you would let myself and Melissa Kelly know, Senior Director of School Sports Programs for Special Olympics, and that person would need to make sure they have a volunteer Class A clearance on file with Special Olympics. And again, if that's the case, you would just let both of us know, and we'll tell you on how that clearance could get accomplished. So in addition to the district rep serving as tournament director or assigning someone in his or her place to serve as tournament director, there is the option of also including an assistant or recruiting an assistant tournament director to help that tournament director with putting on the tournament. There are a few restrictions. No school administrator nor athletics director can serve in the role as tournament director or assistant tournament director, because these duties fall under his or her normal realm of responsibilities. And the same is the case for a tournament director as it is assistant director, in that clearance as a Special Olympics Maryland Class A volunteer is needed in order to fulfill their role. If an assistant tournament director is hired, there is a $75 stipend that's awarded to that person. So please keep that in mind. And again, you just want to inform us of that information no less than 1 week prior to the tournament. As chair, I am more than available to help with the planning and organizing of the tournament. If you do need a Special Olympics representative on site, that is possible for some districts. I know for myself, in terms of where I work and live, I'm a little closer to certain districts than I am to others. But again, I'd be more than happy to help you plan out your tournament and follow up with you after this webinar for any respective issues that you may have to your particular tournament. Here you have the Special Olympics mission, philosophy, vision statements, and core values. And these are important. I won't read them all, but these are important because they're the spirit behind what we do. They're the spirit behind the guidelines, the rules, and why rules and guidelines are set in place. The mission, of course, is to provide year-round sports training and athletic competition in a variety of Olympic-like sports for persons 8 years of age or older with intellectual disabilities, other disabilities, to give them an opportunity to develop fitness, courage, and experience joy, as well as participate in the sharing of gifts. And then for the philosophy, Special Olympics was founded on the belief that people with disabilities can, with proper instruction and encouragement, learn, enjoy, and benefit from participation in both individual and team sports. And here you have the values. So again, everything that we do is to provide meaningful participation and meaningful experiences for children 8 years of age or older with varying disabilities. Page 4 here, you have the contact information. So that's my information at the top, my email address and my cell phone number. As you know, each district has a district representative listed here. And then in terms of Special Olympics staff, there's a regional sports director who's zoned out for the various counties that you have here. Just to clear up anything, the original paperwork due back in December went to the Special Olympics regional sports director. And we'll talk about this later, but the actual postseason registration forms, which served as the roster for postseason play, actually come to me. So I wanted to clear that up for anybody, because some district reps didn't know exactly where to send them. So word on opening ceremonies. In 1988, Special Olympics was officially recognized by the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. And it is because of this relationship that Special Olympics is bound to include various components in each and every competition, to include, of course, our state tournament that we do, but also the respective district tournaments. With that being said, as a part of your district tournament, you want to make sure that, of course, you have the competition, but pre-competition, you want to have some form of an opening ceremony. And then as results are completed, you want to have some form or some system to pass out awards, and then a closing to your actual event. So the goal is to mimic the state tournament as much as possible, with it being acknowledged that it may not be able to be mimicked to a T due to various factors such as venue limitations and time constraints mainly. But with that being said, there are some things you want to make sure you absolutely have in place. And again, the first thing is the opening ceremony. The opening ceremony absolutely sets the tone for the competition. This is very much a culminating experience for all of the athletes and coaches involved in indoor bocce throughout the state of Maryland. And being that every team won't be advancing to the state competition, for many teams, this is actually the culminating experience of indoor bocce. This is the peak, if you will, of competition, speaking of the district tournament. So I say that to say, as a tournament director, you want to make sure you do everything within ability to do so to make this an exciting event, and you want the players to feel that excitement and provide that atmosphere for them. So to do that, you must properly plan for a very engaging and exciting opening ceremony that includes plenty of energy and fanfare. The first step in doing so is selecting a capable master or mistress of ceremonies. This is vital to the success of the tournament and hence the opening ceremony. That person that's selected should be very comfortable with speaking in public, especially using a microphone. If that's the case for your venue, you want somebody with a lot of energy, enthusiastic, and of course with good articulation, and one who understands the importance of crowd engagement and involvement. So when selecting this person, use your best discretion to do so. I've seen district reps handle this duty themselves, or allow their assistant tournament director. You may have a great working relationship with one of your coaches, just anyone who you think would suit this role the best. On the following page, you have a script that is meant to be a template, and you'll see several roles that need to be written in, which will be specific to each venue. So make sure that you look over the following script before the actual tournament starts, because there may be modifications that needs to be made, again, based on your venue. Here we've provided the districts by name and district number, and you'll see why in a minute. There's a part of the script where the district number is included in the script, so be sure when you get to that part in your look over before the ceremony starts that you write in the district number for the corresponding district. So here you have the roles of the opening ceremony. As best as possible, try to have the national anthem played at your tournament if you're able to. If the resources are there, you can have the color guards there, and then you want to select an athlete to read the athlete partner oath, and definitely a coach to read the coach's oath. In some districts, the coaches act as officials as well, so that's not a necessity per se to have the official's oath read, but please do so if time allows, and of course, if the official is there and willing to complete that portion. So here you're looking at the opening script where you can write in the start time of the opening ceremony. So of course, would not be the time of competition, but this would be the time where the opening ceremonies are set to begin. And of course, I won't read it, but the script is provided here for you. You see there is where you would write the district number in. This is what the MC would read, that person who has that great articulation, that great enthusiasm, that great joy, and can get the crowd excited. Where it says optional, again, if you have a color guard, you can welcome them here. If not, then you can disregard that portion. This is just the rest of the script. And just to take a footnote here. So in my experience as district rep, I was district rep for Prince George's County for a few years. And I'm not sure if other districts do this, but we would hold our ceremony during the actual school day. So there was a time we did it on a Saturday, didn't work out quite as well. So we thought it best as a county to hold it during the school day, and it turned out to be an idea that worked very well for us. With that being said, though, putting it during the school day put time constraints on us because county administration wanted the conclusion of the tournament to occur in time for students to get back to their respective schools and on their buses. So I say all that to say we were an example of a district who had to take the opening ceremonies and modify it, as well as the awards, which I'll get to later, and modify it in order to fit into our respective constraints. I know other districts may use venues that are not a part of the school system. They may be municipal buildings, community buildings, and they have it rented for X amount of hours. So whatever the case is for you, please know that you do have to have, or you are very strongly encouraged to have opening ceremonies, but they can be modified to fit your respective constraints if you have them. This is a part that the students, the players, just in my experience, get very excited about, to hear their name, the school name and mascot called. So by all means, if you can, please fit this in. It makes for a great environment, and it's almost like a competition before the competition. It just makes for a great competing atmosphere for all players. Then you have a page for the sponsors. And if you look here, you'll see where the oaths begin. So there's an official's oath, a coach's oath, and an athlete's oath. And my suggestion is to have those roles already assigned before the start of the tournament. Again, in my experience, and I know a lot of y'all have been doing this for years, so by all means, continue to do what you have been doing. Anybody who's new, in my experience, it was always an open invitation for coaches to nominate players to fulfill this role, and then ask for volunteers in terms of coaches and officials to fulfill this role. Solidify before the tournament just to make for efficiency on the day of the tournament. So this script continues. That's here you're looking at the athlete's oath, and then each of them are actually listed together on one page here. So even if you want to, you can just print this document out or print this page out and have it for the various people who are fulfilling these roles to read. Next is the awards ceremony. So everybody who participates should receive an award. Coaches do not receive awards. So as you know, medals are awarded for finishes first through third place, gold, silver, and bronze. Each subsequent place, fourth through eighth, will receive a ribbon. Any player who's officially registered for the competition, what that means is their name appears on the postseason registration form, but that player was unable to compete because of injury or illness, whether they're absent that day or present that day. They were unable to compete because of injury or illness. He or she is still entitled to receive an award for the place of finish for his or her team. So again, if they're on the postseason registration form, which serves as the official roster for the postseason, then that player is entitled to an award if they're not able to compete, because of injury or illness. And of course, awards are not given, they are earned.
Brian, this is Melissa. I would add that they have met the registration requirements as well. So completing the Special Olympics application for participation and their respective school system requirements. So that should go to be assumed, but let's not. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. Now, in the event that a student athlete commences participation, but for whatever reason is disqualified or does not finish an event, that student athlete will receive a participation ribbon. So here you have the awards protocol, and this may look different, again, based on your venue, physical space, physical setup of your venue, and of course, time constraints. But again, please have a system in place to award medals and ribbons. Here are very meticulous steps and guidelines that we provide for you all to follow. If you're unable to follow it, then we just ask again that you follow it as close as you can, accommodating for the time that you have. But just to hit on some of the things, so each tournament, and I should have said this at the beginning, should have a control center where teams check in as they come in, and then you should also have an award ceremony. Sometimes it's one in an area for awards to be given out. Sometimes it's one and the same. Sometimes venues allow for it to be in two separate locations. But one thing you want to be able to do, hopefully, is to have at least a 6-foot table where you can place all of the ribbons and all of the medals and ribbons, and have trays for each medal and ribbon to make it presentable, make it, basically make it look good, and then also to make for efficiency when passing out the ribbons and medals. And also what helps makes it efficient, and I believe this is listed later in the manual, is have a system for each division of your district tournament to report scores and report places of finish as they happen in real time. So at the state tournament, that's how we're able to get it done as quickly and smoothly as we are. As teams finish, they're given their awards as well. Their medals and their ribbons as they finish. So make sure coaches are aware of the location of the awards upon the beginning of the tournament, and then when they are finished, they can be directed straight to the awards area, and that will save you a lot of time. Melissa, did you want to hit on any specifics of the award presentation?
Yeah, folks, I would just say, Brian, you did a great job of explaining it, but this is definitely something that deserves some forethought. So please, we don't know every venue, we don't know every time restraint, that sort of thing. Space as well is certainly a consideration. So just give it some forethought. This is the pie in the sky ideal plan of action, but it's really going to be to your discretion. And then as well, as Brian stated, this is the culminating event for 2/3 of the student athletes. So if a more exemplary and rewarding award presentation would even occur back at their own campus during a lunch hour in front of an audience of sorts, you're free to make that call. So if you want to toss around some ideas with us when we talk through your plan for your tournament, feel free. But from the districts that I've been to, everyone does a really great job of this. But please do pay it some forethought and make it as grand as you possibly can with an audience. So we trust your decisions there, as we do many others. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Melissa, and forgive me for leaving this out. That actually reminds me, I'm sorry, I like to give ideas just to spark thought and consideration, but that was the case for me. I can't remember if I was coaching or the district rep, but one time we knew we weren't going to have time to receive our award, so we had to leave. And what our athletic director did at our school, he just provided a small ceremony at the end of the day, and invited some of the general population to come down to watch the players receive their award. And as you can imagine, it did wonders for, of course, their joy and their happiness to see the general population, to have them witness them receiving their awards. So thanks for reminding me of that, Melissa. Here's the announcer script for the awards. So as you can see, we provide as much as you need to make it grandiose. But again, here's the script. It also be aware that it does include the mascot of each team. This is how it's done at the state tournament. So if you do use this, you want to mimic this, which means you will want to know the mascot of each team, which we do provide as a page here. So it's all there. On to tournament management. So it's very important that you know that attendees of the tournament, spectators, are not to be charged any amount of admission nor parking fees to spectate at the event. No horns or artificial noisemakers are allowed. Electronic effects, including music, may not play when any match is in progress. So I know at sporting events, um, uh, music is a big part of it, and it does set a great atmosphere. But please remember not to play any music during actual match play at the time of the tournament. Again, national anthem, Star Spangled Banner shall be played or sung during the open ceremony, and a host institution may provide color guard for the opening ceremony. Neutrality. If your tournament is being held at one of your schools, please keep in mind that it is not a home event for that particular school. And neutrality is very, very, very important. Therefore, there shouldn't be any additional signage put up anywhere in the facility that creates a home atmosphere. Of course, if it's at a school, there are some standing structures or decorations, for lack of a better word, banners that are already up. We're not saying that you have to cover those things up. We're just asking that you not do anything in addition to permanently standing things that are already a part of the facility that would create a home atmosphere. It is a district tournament, and neutrality is very important. Of course, no alcoholic beverages shall be sold, dispensed for public or private consumption, and no use of tobacco. Tobacco is prohibited on all Maryland public school campuses. Of course, the Americans with Disabilities Act must be followed, which went into effect in 1992, and that basically requires that all public establishments offer equal access and services to people who are disabled, whether that's physically or mentally. So make sure that you're aware of any interests that may be needed to be accessed by an individual, and make sure all coaches are aware of that. Concessions.
One thing,
food and
excuse me,
sorry,
Brian.
go ahead, Melissa.
Just one added point there. Please do survey or make note of any teams that do have people who may have trouble climbing the bleachers, use wheelchairs, so on and so forth, and take steps to ensure that their seating is in the lower part of the, or most accessible point. We started doing this at the state tournament, so we just survey coaches in advance. Do you have anyone who can't climb the bleachers? And then we leave that as reserved seating in the first 3 rows so that everyone can sit together. Thank you.
All right. And then, of course, you want as much as possible to have signs to direct players, coaches, spectators for everything that's included in your venue that's a part of your tournament. So that's bathrooms, water fountains, concessions. And I know what also works well, if you have any areas that are off limits, prohibited. This was especially the case for my district because our tournament was held during the school day. Of course, school was in session, so there were areas that were off limits for people who were participating in a tournament. You want to make sure that you have directional signs that make those things crystal clear. So on to section 3, which is competition management. Of course, we have the allocation. So as you know, and as is stated in the coach's resource guide, each school system will be assigned a certain number of allocations to advance to the 2018 Unified Indoor Bocce State Championship, which is being held on Tuesday, February 13th. So at that tournament, there will be a total of 32 teams participating, each team from one of the participating districts. And that number that each district is allocated is calculated based on the total number of schools that participate statewide. So as late as tomorrow afternoon, you should have that allocation for your district. We were still receiving final numbers of participation this week. And again, tomorrow, as late as tomorrow, tomorrow afternoon, you should have the allocation of that district. Now, in terms of how that affects your district tournament, ideally, you will want to set your district tournament up in divisions corresponding to the number of allocations that you have for the state tournament. For example, if your district is allocated 3 slots for the state tournament, then in your district tournament, you would have 3 divisions, and the gold medal winner for each division would be the team that gets to advance to the state tournament. And there are certain districts or situations who may deem doing it a better way. If that's the case, there are various ways you can do it. So I've seen it where a team was awarded, let's just say, 4 or 6 allocations, and instead of having a division for each allocation, what they would do is they would shrink the number of divisions and take both the gold and the silver medalists from each division. But ideally, you would want the gold medalists from each division to go. And that's one of the things that I usually help tournament directors and or district reps with, if they need help with setting those things up and best practices, because it can get a little tricky sometimes, especially when there's an uneven number of teams in a particular district. But again, after you sit down and look at your allocations and look at your number of teams and how you want to set up your tournament, I'm more than willing to assist you with that. So you want to have a coaches meeting before the opening ceremony, and we could have a supplement A that shows you how to do that. Roster consistency is very important. So this is a big one. The plating roster must be consistent with the roster as it appears on your post-season registration. However, scratches are permissible. So the post-season registration form that I am receiving from district reps, from coaches, that is very important, because those are the players that must play for that team on that day. I'll just say this: if a school has multiple teams, one school with multiple teams, there cannot be any mixing and matching. So if school A has a team 1 and a team 2, and someone from team 1 is missing that day, that school cannot take a player from team 2 to fill in that spot. So that postseason registration, I can't stress it enough, it serves as the official roster, and no one can be added to it the day of the tournament. Of course, scratches are permissible. However, if the scratches take a team below the required number of 4 players, then they'll still be able to participate, but only in exhibition format, meaning the game will be forfeited to the other team. So please keep that in mind. I spoke on competition brackets. We have several templates at the end of this host manual that we'll be sending you that gives you options for the different types of brackets. So we have two team brackets all the way up, I believe, to 16 brackets with various formats such as single elimination, double elimination, and round robin formats provided for you. Match results. So it's preferred that a game is complete when one of 2 things happens. The winning point total reaches 16, so one team earns 16 points, or when time has elapsed. At the state tournament, it is 30 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa.
That's correct.
That's correct. 30 minutes. Okay. So in your district tournaments, we ask if, for your matches to be 30 minutes. If extenuating circumstances dictate that a match cannot be 30 minutes, as the tournament director, you do have it at your discretion to shorten the match, but we ask that you do not shorten it to less than 20 minutes. Also, in setting up your tournament, this is a district tournament, so we don't want to have it to be a one and done tournament, meaning you just play one match. So each team shall play no less than 2 matches. And again, the brackets help you comply with that. Any match that remains tied at the end of regulation time, the teams will continue the match and play will continue until a winner determined at the end of each complete frame. And what you want to do is at your tournament, you want to make it clear exactly what ends a game and when a game ends. So if it's in the middle of the frame and the time expires, then it should be clear to all coaches that once the time expires at the conclusion of that frame, that ends a frame. If the time expires in between frames, then a new frame is not to begin. Because it's the heat of competition, you want to make sure that all coaches are clear on this. And while I'm there, whatever type of venue you're using, it's great if you have a digital clock. So if you're in a basketball gym or wherever, hockey rink, if you could access the venue's mass clock, that would be great. If not, just make sure you have a system for communicating the expiration of time and make sure all coaches and players are aware of what that system is. So, integrity of the games. Athletes, partners, and coaches have been working very hard all year and have trained hard to have the opportunity to showcase their skills that they've been practicing, that they've been using in competition. So with that being said, as tournament director, every effort should be made to uphold the integrity of competition, including maintaining the rules. So rule issues come up every tournament. I strongly suggest that as tournament director, you're more than familiar with the rules, because many times rules have to be interpreted on site. A very even stronger suggestion is anytime it calls for you to interpret a rule to a coach or coaches, even if you know the rule off the top of your head, to always reference the coach's resource guide and present the rule to them and on paper to where they can see it and then interpret it to them. That's just speaking from personal experience. It's the best way to present rules to coaches and to interpret rules. Again, as I stated earlier, a control center area must be designated and equipped as much as possible with those things listed there, covered by a tent if possible. Not really necessary for indoor, but it's definitely essential that you have it for team check-in, and then there's a place where coaches and or officials can report their scores, and if that's where the public address system is, that as well. Spoke on results. Make sure you retain all score sheets and brackets upon their submission. Please do not discard them. They or you may need them later for various reasons. So as you make sure you have a way for receiving, tabulating, and posting the match results. So this is part of, this is an element that makes for a great tournament. So at the state tournament, results of each match are listed as soon as possible, sequentially from the conclusion of the match. So at the state tournament, it's great to do that as well. If you can, you can get the brackets printed out on big Post-its, or you can use the large Post-it sheets and have an area where you have the results and people can see the results. The players love to go up to the results area and see how their team is doing, how they're advancing, who they could possibly play next. It just makes for a great competitive atmosphere and adds to the environment. Any scratches that a team has should be reported upon check-in. So any scratch a team has, when the team checks in with you at the control center or whoever the designated person is checking them in, make sure that that coach informs you of the scratch, and that keeps them, even with the scratch, they stay in compliance with the rules. As far as protests, any protest that a coach or player has must be filed within 15 minutes of the completion of a match. So make sure this is clear to your coaches. At the beginning, protests are to be submitted in writing. And in terms of making a decision on a protest, a sports rule committee will be responsible for doing that. So before the tournament starts, the tournament director must enlist himself, herself, and 2 coaches as the designated sports committee. And if it's possible, also include an athlete and a unified partner as a part of that committee. Of course, any party that is a part of the sports committee who's involved in a protest should excuse themselves from making a judgment or decision, as a part of that process.
Brian, just one thing to add there. So
yes,
one should recuse themselves if their team is involved in the protest, but also if their team is in the division in which the protest would affect.
Correct. Section 4, critical incident response and inclement weather plan. So please make sure you abide by your athletics department's medical coverage requirements. So any equipment, any resources, human resources that are required by your athletic district, please make sure that those things are in place. Please have a plan for any critical incidents that may happen, to include first aid, what have you. Make sure you as tournament director is fully aware of the procedures and protocols prior to the tournament in the event of emergency evacuation, things of that nature. Inclement weather, we all know this is the time of inclement weather. So with your tournament date, you want to provide first an inclement weather date, and then a plan of communication in the case of inclement weather. A decision to postpone the tournament should happen at least 5 hours prior to the opening ceremony time. So I know a lot of our communication is via email. So if that's the case, you just would want to encourage your coaches, hey, at the event of inclement weather, please constantly check your emails for updates to look for any decisions that are made in terms of postponing the tournament. You, of course, wouldn't want a school to arrive to a venue and the tournament has been postponed, or a school to assume postponement where postponement didn't actually happen. So make sure that communication tactics are in place in the event of inclement weather. Section 5, this is great. So here is a Bocce tournament checklist for you to print out and to use. So this covers many of the things that we've already spoken about. Start time, daytime, equipment plan. You want to have a competition schedule, of course, driving directions to your tournament, food service plans. Make sure you communicate with your coaches the plan for food, especially if it's being held throughout the day. Forgive me, I keep going back to Prince George's district tournament. Ours was during the day, so we were required to have a plan for lunch. I'm not sure about the guidelines of your district, but whatever they are, please abide by those. Of course, if you're having concessions, you want to inform the coaches of that before the tournament, so parents, students can bring the appropriate funds if they so wish to purchase concessions. Medical personnel, follow those guidelines, direction signage. Make sure you have adequate water stations set up and a functional public address system. So ceremonies, competition, we covered all of these things. I'm just reading through them. But again, use this as your checklist to make sure things are in place. Here is the post-season registration form. While I have some district reps here, please remember to follow the guidelines that were sent on December 18th in an email titled Post-Season Registration Form. I am in the process of collecting forms already. The due date for those forms to me is January the 16th. And in me collecting them, I've already noticed that some coaches are having a few errors on their postseason registration form. So looking at this form, you see that there's an example of Joe Smith. First thing, leave that example there. Do not erase it. If it's erased at a certain time, it could affect the final calculation. And then where you have a slap for each name, you also have a corresponding 0 in the total column. Once you filled out each name and each player's score, for any empty spaces, so say for example your team or a team only has 6 names listed, that's going to leave 2 empty spaces on the playing roster and then 2 empty spaces under the substitutes. Please, after you input all the scores, and it must be done after you input the names and the scores, go over to the total column and erase the 0 for any spaces where you do not have a player's name. If those zeros are not erased, then it significantly affects the average score. Of course, it doesn't affect the total, but it will affect the average. And in collecting a few forms already, I've seen where some coaches are missing that. They're not erasing those zeros. So it just creates more work for somebody. We have to go in and erase the zeros, or it has to get sent back to the district rep, who has to send it back to the coach, and then it has to come back up. So please make sure you stress to your coaches that they need to fill this form out the correct way. And then you as district rep, please vet the forms thoroughly to make sure they are filled out correctly before sending them to me. In that document and video that shows you how to properly fill this form out, we also require you to name your file. Once you've completed it and saved it, please change the name of it. Of course, when you open it, it's titled 2017-18 postseason Bocce registration form. If everybody kept that name, then there would be 100 files with their same name, which, as you can imagine, can cause some issues. So please follow the specific naming structure that was given, which is your 2-county abbreviation, underscore, and then the name of your school. And if you have multiple teams, it's that same format, save for at the end or after you put the name of your school, you put another underscore and you put team 1, team 2, so forth. But this is the official roster, and this is what will be used as states to verify your team and to verify your playing roster each match. So we ask that that's mimicked at the district tournament. Court markings. When you set up your tournament, please make sure that you have court markings for each of the lines that are used, the foul lines, the ramp foul lines, the mid-court line, and make sure that you have raised markers as well, cones. If you do need assistance or if you need equipment such as floor tape, which is used for markings, please let me know and we will provide that for you if you're in need of that and you need us to provide that for you. But your court at the district tournament, it must have these court markings. So this was the coaching pre-meeting that we talked about, pre-competition meeting, that we talked about. You can just use this as a template to create your own timeline for the games to have everybody on the same page. And then, of course, a basics of Bocce, officials quick reference guide. So this is basically taken straight from the coach's resource guide, just included on here. Make sure you're in compliance with all of these, the court markings, the play, and the rules. Of course, any student athlete who is not able to comply with the rules due to physical or mental limitations, at the beginning of the tournament, before it starts, this is when that is to be reported to you as the tournament director. And then before the start of each match, it should also be communicated to the coaches as well, the opposing coaches as well. Please don't wait until it's that player's time to roll to communicate the issue. It should be, again, communicated at the beginning of the tournament upon check-in, and then again to each opposing coach. Remember that for each frame, here, line 10, line of composition, each frame, you have two options. Each frame should either be 2 players with disabilities and 2 players without disabilities, or 3 players with disabilities and 1 player without a disability. So either a 2-to-2 ratio of athlete to partner, or a 3-to-1 ratio in favor of athlete to partner. And with that, each player of like role must have an approximately equal amount of throwing opportunities. So in terms of your rotations during each frame, it must be done in a way where players of like role have equal throwing opportunities. You don't have one athlete rolling it significantly more number of times than another athlete, and the same for partners. Also, keep in mind as tournament directors that substitutions are only allowed for rosters who have 8 players on their playing roster. After 8 players, then 2 additional players can be used as substitutions. What cannot happen is a team have less than 8 players and then designate a sub. So you can't have 6 players on your playing roster and then 1 player listed as a sub. That would be considered out of compliance with the substitution rule. And subs are made 1 time during the match per role, preferably halfway, but it can be made at other times. Here is a score sheet provided, so you, of course, would want to make sure you have an adequate amount of these printed out for your tournament. And then supplement D is where the brackets begin. So at the bottom in the left-hand corner of each bracket page, you'll see what type of bracket this is. So this first one is a 2-team round robin bracket. and then it goes on from there. A 3-team round robin bracket with tie-break criteria, and then another 3-team with a different set of tie-break criteria. So I won't spend much time on these. I just wanted you to see them, wanted you to know that they're there for your use, your benefit, and reiterate my willingness to help you to choose the correct one, and then also help you to division your brackets if need be. So correct, yep, it goes up to 6 teams.
One thing to add there as well,
Yep.
folks, I've worked in sports since graduating college, so many years, as many of us have, and it's a really good best practice to have someone look at your final product before announcing it to everyone. And that could be, it should be Brian or myself, just so that we have that sense of confidence. And then quite possibly your supervisor of athletics, if he or she would like to be involved, that might be a good practice as well. So just have a second set of eyes, take a look at the very least, so that we're all in agreement before distributing the schedule.
All righty. So that actually concludes my portion. I'm going to unmute the line. Did anyone have any questions? I believe it looks like just Steve and Barbara were on. Steve, Barb, did you have any questions for me or Melissa? All right.
Brian, if you could just take a moment and talk about the officiating format that Prince George's uses, with that having one coach or one representative, adult representative from each team officiate. I think that works really well. And then as well has someone, 2 vested parties officiating cooperatively. I think that's a really good practice to share.
Sure. So what we would do in Prince George's County, and that's exactly what we do. We have a fairly large county, so we weren't able to secure separate officials for our district tournament. We had, I think, six courts set up at a time. So we mimicked what we did in the regular season, which was to require one coach from each team during a match to act as officials. So each match would have 2 officials, one representing each team, and it usually, would be, of course, or not of course, but it usually would be the assistant coach, or in some instances, it would be the head coach as well. And in terms of, one of the biggest things was measurements. So we would just come up with a system pre-match. Of course, there's specific guidelines for measurements, but which coach would, read the measurements, things of that nature. But the most important thing is, as Melissa said, whomever the officials are, if you are in a situation like Prince George's and you have to use coaches to officiate, I do believe other districts are like that. You want to make sure, of course, that you have multiple officials / coaches, one being from each team because of the vested interest, I should say, or like better words, to officiate those games. What you wouldn't want, of course, is just one coach officiating or 2 coaches from one team officiating and not have any other representatives or adults from another team officiating. But like I said, some districts are different. You are able to recruit officials, I would just say make sure pre-competition that you thoroughly go over what the rules are, how to score, how to signal who goes next, and then make it clear how any discrepancies or protests will be settled. Did I leave anything out, MK?
No, that's a great review. One other thing that brings to mind is please, as we've stated over and over, mobilize a support cast. It would be perfectly acceptable for if you do have whomever to brief who is acting as the officials ahead of time, and do have them reference and physically have printouts of the basics of Bocce supplement, and get that to those folks ahead of time. In the rare instance, people just year after year will say, oh, I know the rules, or oh, I've been officiating all year, and it could be the ever so slightest rule modification from season to season that is overlooked and could be to the detriment of a team. So we don't want that to happen, and obviously we want it to be in recent memory reviewed. So please make that happen. Likewise, quite certainly, it may go without saying, but a plan for the equipment. So not only the court markings, but also physically getting the courts there. So if teams are responsible for transporting courts with them on their bus, if that's allowable through the school system, that might be something. If transporting those courts ahead of time needs to happen, and it would take please do take the time to measure out your court. A standard basketball court, for example, is 94 feet. So making sure what the space allocation in between courts and allowing for transition room, especially for people who may have some mobility considerations.
That's a great point.
All in all, that a very conclusive presentation, Brian. Thank you very much for being so thorough.
Yep. And one additional note. This is, I'm assuming, the one time, first and only time, that you may have all of your schools and players convene in one venue. So it's a great opportunity for you to enforce the importance of the proper uniform. So, of course, before competition, you stress the uniform requirements to the coaches, and then upon arrival, you want to make sure you enforce that, because we don't want anyone misled into thinking they're able to participate while being out of uniform compliance, because when the state tournament comes, they will not be able to participate. And unfortunately, it happens, or it has happened more frequently than we've liked, where we've had issues with uniform. So I know as district rep, it's almost impossible to kind of monitor it during the season, because you can't be at every match, every venue. But for the district tournament, everyone is there. So please make sure that you're adamant about enforcing the uniform requirements, which of course are listed in the coach's resource guide. And with that being said, again, if there are no questions, then that concludes this webinar. Thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you all soon.